helping
Turn left at the traffic light, then turn right.
In place before the pandemic started. It's another way to keep up with the rising competition in the city.
Sure. Grant Wells, project reporter of Boston Business Journal. Thanks for taking time and joining us on Bloomberg Bay State Business. On deck, we're going to be hearing from the CEO of Bank of America, Brian Moynihan, as he speaks with Bloomberg's David Weston, host of Balance of Power. That's coming up in just a few moments. But first, we want to check those financial markets. For that, we go to our world headquarters in New York and Charlie Pellin.
Charlie's off today, Joe, so I'll pick it up. It's Doug Prisner here in New York. We've got a mixed picture for the equity market. A lot of concern today developing around the cost of the Omicron
Turn right
variant.
at the traffic light.
A new study indicating it's 4.2 times more transmissible than the Delta, at least in early stages. And then strategists over at Deutsche Bank were saying today more people could end up being hospitalized even if a lower proportion of them are severely infected. We've been talking a lot about the FDA expanding eligibility of the Pfizer COVID booster. Stock right now in Pfizer is higher by about 1.8%. By the way, that expansion will include 16 and 17-year-olds. So as I mentioned, mixed for stocks, with the Dow higher by 0.3%, but the S&P is down 0.2%, and the NASDAQ composite off about 1% today. So the risk-off mood has really forced long-term interest rates much lower. 10-year Treasury now at 1.48%. And in terms of the Bloomberg Boston Stock Index, we are down now about 0.6%. And in small caps, the Russell 2000 weaker by about 1.5%. I'm Doug Prisner, and that is the Bay State Business Flash.
The news in Washington has a ripple effect on the country and the world. Do you think we're in the start of a Cold War with China? That's why we bring you the top headlines from Capitol Hill every weekday afternoon.
Redhead on the terminal. This is breaking right now.
Bloomberg Sound On with Joe Matthew.
We bring in the tail now to round out the fastest hour in politics.
Weekday afternoons at 5.
Do you duck and cover, or do you try to spin this?
On Bloomberg 1061 Boston News Report and 92.9 HD2.
In 1/4 mile, turn left on Willow Street.
Needs to say I do to 4 commercial drivers.
Another wedding on Saturday.
Before wedding match, we immediately show you quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed meet your sponsored job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
What's the true value of your custodial relationship? Ben Harrison of BNY Mellon Pershing explains.
As sophisticated investors demand more from their advisors, advisory firms, in turn, need to rely on their custodian to help them grow their complex businesses. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, supporting the rapid growth of RIAs is our #1 priority. We understand what it means to deliver true value to our clients who are looking for a custodian that is aligned with their best interests and delivers high-value solutions, all in an open architecture environment with flexibility, choice, and transparency. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength, resiliency, and high-touch service that BNY Mellon Pershing provides. When you work with Pershing, we put your business first. Can your custodian say that?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Pershing Advisor Solutions, LLC. Member FINRA SIPC.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically. Yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SCI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SCI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create
Turn left at the traffic light.
Potential and change. Our industry specialists will maximize SCI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SCI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize-change.
President of the Jewish Communal Fund, Zoya Raines, and her husband Robert Friedman, Jewish activists and philanthropists, talk about why they chose the Jewish Communal Fund for their charitable giving.
As very busy working parents, we wanted to focus more on the charity of it and wanted to focus more on our children and less on the administration.
The Jewish Communal Fund is one of the oldest and largest donor-advised funds, but at the same time, they are totally up-to-date and have state-of-the-art systems for us to access and manage our contributions online. The assets in our fund at the JCF grow tax-free, so we can generate more charitable dollars to support the charities that we care about most.
Let JCF minimize your taxes and maximize your charitable giving.
We're incredibly passionate about our charity, and the JCF allows us to focus more on the charity and less on the administration and the headaches.
For more information about Jewish Communal Fund, visit our website at jcfny.org and request a new fund kit.
Okay, we're standing by here at Bloomberg Bay State Business for Brian Moynihan, the CEO of Bank of America. On Tuesday, he was at Goldman Sachs U.S. Financial Services conference, where he said the markets will be up, and his performance in those markets close to 2020 levels. So he's a fairly confident guy at this point. Let's now join Bloomberg Balance of Power host David Weston as he speaks with Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan.
For our Bloomberg television and radio audiences, as well as YouTube around the world, I'm David Weston, and we're joined now by the Chairman and CEO of Bank of America, Brian Moynihan. Brian, thank you so much for having us to your trading floor here in New York.
Well, David, it's good to see you again. Happy holidays, and you can see our team working away, doing what they do best, which is working with their clients to make a little money for the firm, too.
I must say, a lot more people here than the last time I was here, frankly.
That's true. That's true. This group's been back for a good bit of time now because it just was easier to function and to do what they do in the markets for the clients. They needed to be here. But they worked from home for the first 10, 12 months. I mean, like everybody else, it was a little different.
So, Brian, atop Bank of America, you have almost a unique vantage point on the economy. Well, let's talk about the economy. One of the big points of discussion in recent months
in 1/2 mile, turn left on Ferry Street.
Morning, actually. Yeah. Where do you think we are right now on inflation in the United States?
That's not. It's actually not the debate. The inflation, for the last several quarters has been higher than target. The question is, where do people think it's going to go next? And I think that's what's kind of on people's minds. So if you look at it, what you're seeing is the wage growth and the expectation of wage growth and these talented people, what they're going to earn and what they didn't expect to earn next year. That's for the inflation.
In 1/4 mile, turn left on Ferry Street, then take the second right.
And so if you think about the economy growing 5.5% to 6% this year, 4% next year, low 4s next year, and 2% in 23, the goal is to glide into that trend growth rate without causing.
Turn left at the traffic light, then take the second right.
Policy has to go on now.
So, as I think, you have a particular viewpoint in the economy, particularly because you have a lot of small and medium-sized businesses, the middle market you deal with across the country. So tell us about the effect of the supply chain on those companies and therefore perhaps on inflation.
Well, as a bank, one of the effects that we didn't like is they aren't using our lines as much because they aren't putting up as much inventory and hiring as many people just because of shortages. And people can't forget the shortages in labor now, too. So it's not only goods to manufacture, it's also the people to make them. And so when you talk to our clients, they all give you, it's messed up. It's getting a little bit better. It's easing forward. It's been a problem for many months now. And the belief that it's totally related to the virus is true, but
turn right at the traffic light, then take the second left.
Consumers are spending a lot, buying a lot of things, and we can talk about that separately. So businesses are able to increase prices because there's only so much goods to sold, and that leads to inflation. But more importantly, they are starting to see a little bit of help and are starting to use their lines, but the reality is it's a real concern. One of the risks is we need people and goods to manufacture for 2022, and those things got to straighten out relatively soon, and that's why you're seeing the administration bring other people in to help and get the people together and figure it out. And it's been going on for 10 months.
I want to go back to the consumer question you suggested. Before that, you say there's a little bit of improvement. As you talk to your customers, how fast is the supply chain problem improving? And do you have any sense of when we may be getting back to
turn left at the traffic light?
I think it's a slower fix, but each day it's better. It's care what happened 2 years ago. Do I have the stuff today, and can I get it tomorrow? So that's what's starting to get better. And the bigger companies have learned to work around it. You've read the articles or seen the data about that. I'm sure some people have been on the show here talking about. They've learned to get some control of their import stream, for lack of a better term. But it's something that's got to be reckoned with and done. And yet you're seeing it slightly better, and the projection is slightly better. So you're seeing car dealers start to get some more cars on lot. You're seeing none of it's
should the Federal Reserve do given reasons for inflation?
Well, we don't have to guess because Chair Powell kind of told Congress last week and was pretty clear about it. The first job is to bring the balance sheet down and take accommodation out on the purchase side. They started. My guess is they'll speed that up. The market expects them to speed it up. It won't hurt the market if they speed it up. Got to be a little careful with some of the things around year end to make sure it doesn't have impact. And then the market has the Fed increase in the Fed funds rate in May. That could speed up if the belief that inflation is actually stronger. And the inflation is sticky as the wage inflation because it's hard to get back out. Gas prices will go up until supply comes down. You see them mitigate a little bit now, but in some of the other parts and stuff. But the real one's wages because you are at full employment now in the United States at 4.2%. Wage growth is strong. That's going to be that's harder to get out of the system or hard to mitigate. The key thing, and we talked about this, I think, somewhere earlier on, is that an economist looks at inflation different than you and I might. If you were paying $100 for something last year, now you're paying $115. They're looking at what's going to happen next. You and I are saying, I'm paying $115. I got this for $100 6 months ago. That difference is the expectations, and that's what you're seeing solidify in the next inflation above the target rate. That's what causes them to move as much as the past average.
At the same time, the Federal Reserve has two mandates. It's both price stability as well as full employment. You say we're sort of at full employment. Certainly unemployment numbers would suggest that. But we know there are a lot of people on the sidelines that weren't on the sidelines when this pandemic started. Can the Fed help that situation by keeping the rates lower? Does it make any difference?
I'm not sure it helps. In the sense that we've got thousands of job openings. We'll hire 4,000 or 5,000 people this quarter. And we'll basically be flat to down headcount because of turnover rate 10%, which is what it was in 19. We're back up to dropped by half in 20 because of course people didn't change jobs during the heart of the pandemic and the work from home. So it's back up to the level it was before. So we're hiring these people. Everybody leaving us is going someplace too. It's not like they're going out not working. So the reality is that the quit rate's high, the hire rate's high, and the net growth in jobs is going up, but not as fast. That should drag people off. Rates won't have a lot to do with it. What's going to have to do is companies getting the materials, needing the people to do the work, and know they can sell it, pushing it. The broad-based enforcement. It's at full employment because the point a group of us made last week when we were talking to the officials was that full employment means wage growth is fast. It's hard to get people. People are quitting. That's true today. And so we don't know why those people aren't coming back. People retiring, the wealth effect of the market has given them more ability to retire and quit working. People may be working. Schools bouncing around and being open until we get this virus controlled behind us. All those are possibilities. But the reality is we don't know. But the reality is when you're hiring people, you have to pay more, which is good for the colleagues and teammates here. But the reality is that's what full inflation means. Is labor can quit, get paid more and stuff. That's what you're trying to achieve, and I think they're there.
One of the phenomena we're seeing is households having a fair amount of money still on their balance sheet. Some of that's, I think, because of the stimulus from the federal government. A lot of money was distributed. People are getting jobs. They're getting paid more money. What are you seeing at Bank of America in terms of people's bank accounts?
So let's separate two things, the spending and the bank accounts, because one, they're almost counterintuitive. If you look at our spending, so if you think about 17, 18, 19, and so what you had is the economy picked up by almost 0.5% to 1%. You had tax reform. You had companies were full employment 3.6%, and wages were starting to grow. And as you thought of that going on, 17, 18, 19, the spending by our customers went from about 5 or 6% growth year over year to 10%. So then you hit 2020, and the first half obviously slowed down a lot. The second half it actually caught 19 again, and then it ended the year a few points over 19. So 2020 you actually had more money spent than 19, which is hard to believe. It was a tale of the first half of the year, nothing, and then the second half. When you got to 21, and instantaneously started exceeding 19. We are now at 20+% over what it was in 19. So that's credit cards, debit cards, Zelle payments, wires, checks written, all the ways consumers spend money, and that's $3.3 trillion from November. So that means people are spending a lot of money. Your intuition would say they're either borrowing a lot on their lines of credit cards. We've gone up from 75 to 80 billion in total, and it's 300 billion, so 10 points is 30 billion difference. They aren't borrowing. And the second would say they'd be draining their bank accounts. And the answer is that their bank accounts for the last several months have continued to grow.
So that's what I can't understand.
At the roundabout, take the second exit.
Cash flow positive, the inability to spend it is only, we forget we're all impatient as Americans. The world's only opened up relatively recently. think about what people plan for vacation versus the fall. So you're seeing that wheel crank, and people are starting to spend the money. And look at it. I just look at restaurants are 20% over where they were in 19 this time, and for the month of November, to give you a sense, in terms of credit card and debit card spending. That's pretty amazing when you think about it. That means 20% more money is being spent over the counter at a restaurant. So I think it's now if you look at the accounts, if you look across the strata, the account that had maybe under $1,000 in it before the pandemic in their checking account, now its total account balance is probably
at the roundabout, take the second exit to Broadway.
It just hasn't happened yet because it built up, and the cash flow is now so strong, and there was they are paying their student loans. Maybe they had mortgage payments for a while. All that built up, and now you expect it to be spent down. It just isn't happening yet. That bodes well for 2022's economic growth when the consumers still have that much money availability, and they have the lines on their credit cards available, etc. So we'll see.
For our Bloomberg Television Radio audiences worldwide, we're speaking with Brian Moynihan. He's the chairman and CEO of Bank of America. We're talking about consumers here, Brian. Let's talk about the commercial lending.
In 2.5 miles, take the ramp on the right to I-93 South.
Which we're the largest small business lender in the country. You're seeing us originate new credits at a faster rate than we did in 19. So we finally broke through. It took a while. Sharon Miller runs that business for this is companies with under $5 million in revenue. In the business banking segment, you're seeing their loan balances grow, and that gets a little more generated by people using the lines and stuff. So Raul and I runs that. We're probably running low single-digit growth there. But in overall commercial book, in the first quarter, we started growing. At the end of the quarter, people thought we were crazy when we told them that. The second quarter, decent growth, and that's a combination of new originations, especially in the smaller end, and people using the lines again, just a little bit more. There's still a big difference between how people use.
There are places you want to invest some more, and maybe some places you want to invest. As you look at Bank of America, where do you need to invest more for the kind of growth you want?
Well, think about our business. Invest in our world because the balance sheets are factory. It's different than other worlds. In other worlds, do I want to spend more stuff? Here I have capital. I think what my risk appetite is. So we've made a big investment in the business. You see here, we've let them grow their balance sheet by a couple $100 billion. You've seen them get more revenue out of that. They're doing a great job for their clients. Jimmy DeMar that runs it, Tom Montag is going to retire, but did a great job running this business and building it in a way we can sustain it. And so they're going to have, we just told people they'd have trading this quarter about flat to last year, about flat to the year before. Those 2 quarters were the biggest 4 quarters we've ever had in this business. It's the recovery from the last, from the 2007 struggle. So we invested capital here, in compensation for the talent that we have. If you go to the commercial banking, it's relationship lending. You got to put more people in the field, and so we're adding 150 lenders in the business banking. In a growth engine that was the system 17, 18, 19. Once we got really solidly on footing, we're up in 20, but it's right back on in 21.
So when we talked a little while ago, you assumed that maybe you hadn't taken enough risk in investment banking. You were going to adjust that. You made a lot of progress, a lot of changes in investment banking. Have you got that where you want it to be right now? As you mentioned, Tom Montag,
and also how do you want the culture. So that all those issues are sort of together. One answer is hard to be patient until businesses still have you get most likely back to dollars, and then we'll sort of based on
In 1/4 mile, turn left on Monsignor O'Brien Highway. Turn left at the traffic light.
Back, and now they'll go back based on guidance that came out just this morning, and we'll work it through. And we have a talent team under Sherry Bonstein, our head of human resources, Steve Bolin, our chief administrative officer, and Andrea Smith that worked with him on that town before, and then a group of people. This is what they do. They're tracking all this all over the world and figuring it out. And then we have our own medical advisors that give us advice about what the best thing is. Because at the end of the day, we want to do what's right to protect our team, but we also have to remember we got a company. We have to protect the company and each other from it. So we work it, but it's tricky to manage. It's all the answer is all they're all different. Italy is 100% mandate. They're all there. It just really depends on what you are.
Brian, thank you so much for being with us. I really appreciate it. That is Brian Moynihan, the chairman and CEO of Bank of America for Bloomberg Television, Radio, and YouTube. Now back to you.
All right, thank you very much, David Weston, talking to the CEO of Bank of America, Brian Moynihan, a local guy. House in Wellesley. There were almost a dozen headlines generated by that discussion on the Bloomberg terminal. Some of this conversation very interesting. Give you some of the bullet points. Moynihan says they will hire 4,000 to 5,000 employees in 4Q. Talking about spending, consumer spending, he says, is up more than 20% compared to 2019. And Joe, there was a point at which he said bank accounts that had $1,000 in them now have 5 times that. And so he was sounding an optimistic note there about consumer spending, saying sooner or later they'll get around to spending. So all that $5 trillion. He talked a great deal about return to office. I know you want to get into
In 1/4 mile, turn right on Storrow Drive.
I just heard David Weston interviewing Bank of America's Brian Moynihan. He said, in essence, about 50 to 60% of his folks, and he's got more than 200,000 employees around the world, are back at work. He said they're all vaccinated.
Turn right at the traffic light.
Vaccinated. That these mixed environments don't work. You can't have people who are and people who aren't. Weston asked him about a mandate, and he said we'll get there, but I'm not sure I heard a direct answer, Joe, as to whether he was for or against the mandate on vaccines.
It didn't necessarily seem like he wanted to take a stand on the mandate, but it seems like that's exactly what they're doing at Bank of America. The only ones that are back are the ones who are vaccinated. And he basically pointed out, I understand that this is a personal decision a lot of people have to make, but I have to run a company. Some of the other headlines that he's been making here in the Bloomberg terminal.
In 1/4 mile, be in the second lane from the right, then keep right to Storrow Drive West.
There in L.A. Talks about they expect things to be normal in about 6 months. That feels like forever, but at least somebody is seeing an end in sight, and it sounds a little bit like what Moynihan is saying. And then he said that
Storrow Drive West.
Commercial banking staff. So, a rather bullish message, really. When you examine exactly what he's saying. And there's also a story, Tom, on the terminal today, written by Catherine Doherty, and the headline is Bank of America.
In 1/2 mile, keep right on Storrow Drive.
Cars to draw big card spenders. It basically has to do with this, metal credit card. If you're at a certain level, you can use the card to, perks like exotic driving cars and booking private jets. So, it certainly feels kind of old.
Yeah, he certainly feels very confident about things on the consumer spending, but as you point out, the way the bank is running right now, the shares trading at $44.40, and year-to-date, the stock is up 46.5%, so he's got a lot to crow about.
In 1/4 mile, be in the second lane from the right, then keep right to Storrow Drive.
And that is the whole return to office business. He always talks about the kids, the young people who've been hired during or just before the pandemic, who've never seen their boss face to face. That seems to
Keep right on Storrow Drive.
return to office. I mean, certainly not the only one, but it's always something he expresses. He says that when they get back, they'll be able to take more advantage of this mentoring that's so important. He says at Bank of America, and certainly at other places.
Yeah, I think absent from what he was saying, though, was this whole issue that you're seeing with the spike in COVID and how that is impacting the return to office. He didn't, there wasn't even a blip from him on that, and especially when you look at the headlines in the Bloomberg terminal talking about Lyft won't require staff to return to office until 2023. In other words, stay home all of 2022.
Yeah. Well, just a note on that. I don't think I've talked to him.
Turn right at the traffic light.
These very interesting conversations with Weston. I'm not sure he's the kind of guy who's going to ever say anything like that. Take your time getting back. I think there's a certain urgency I picked up in his comments, even though he never said, hey, there's a mandate, this is what we're going to do. I think
You didn't hear that?
No, I heard
all the people with vaccinations are coming back. That's what I heard.
He also said we're a work from office company. Well,
Yeah, right. Work go.
you're not a work from home company.
That's right.
We've done the work from home now and again, here and there.
Yeah.
But we're not a work from home.
Yeah, it's the same thing. The other headline on the terminal, Jeffries asking staff to work from home as COVID cases rise. Vaccines already are required to those returning to the
In
office.
3/4 mile, turn left on Gloucester Street.
Through the end of January, let's not even talk about it until then.
Jamie Dimon, of course, who heads up the largest U.S. bank, J.P. Morgan Chase, their assets now $3.19 trillion, according to Bankrate.com. Now, he's been more bullish, he's been more vocal about this getting back to work. But I think if these two were having a cup of coffee and you sat down next to them, you'd hear, just about the same thing.
You would, except that Moynihan would say.
Moynihan's a little more.
In 1/4 mile, turn left on Gloucester Street.
Yeah.
Diamond's a little more blunt.
Yeah, I think so.
Not just in those moments, but other moments that we know about. All right. So that concludes that. I think Moynihan's very comfortable here with Bloomberg and certainly with David Weston. So our thanks
Turn
to Mr.
left
Weston
at the
for
traffic
that.
light.
Coming up in our next hour in Mazdu, taking a look at Uber and Lyft and why this is important. Well, one thing, the convenience factor. In May, the Globe published a story that said the wait times. I mean, Boston is, as a city, compared to Washington and others, way up there as far as the length of a wait time for an Uber and Lyft. So a lot of people out at Logan Airport saying, man, I'm waiting forever for one of those. We'll also get into this ad campaign they've launched to make sure that people vote their way in this referendum question. They want their drivers to remain independent contractors. All that and more coming up next. This is Bloomberg.
In 1/4 mile, turn left on Boylston Street.
Institute of Technology makes innovation happen. the university helped biomedical engineering professor Tara Alvarez launch a startup that may revolutionize vision therapy.
Our startup through NJIT is called Oculomotor Technology. We create virtual reality vision therapy in a head-mounted display. So it's gaming, and basically we're sugarcoating the therapy so that children and young adolescents don't even realize they're doing therapy. To accomplish this, we need biomedical engineers, which are here on NJIT campus, computer scientists, artists, people that are into story development, and then we're collaborating with a lot of the large pediatric medical centers. This idea of a startup culture is extremely important to not just NJIT and the National Science Foundation, but also
Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
The expressway southbound coming out of the O'Neill Tunnel down to Savin Hill, and then from just about Freeport down to Braintree, it's okay, although it does get slow right at the Braintree split. Northbound expressway, it's bumper to bumper from Furnace Brook Parkway to Neponset. Also slow inside the 10 Tunnel westbound, leaving the airport. You're on the brakes inside the O'Neill South, and on Stone Drive westbound, a little bit of company leaving Leverett Circle. It's better by the long tunnel there. The upper to 93 northbound, brake lights through Medford before Spot Pond. Slow again through Wilmington by 125, and then on 128 south, you're delayed in Burlington right before Route 3. Pike's not bad. A little bit of company on the westbound side right at 128 there in West Newton. Lower end of 93, both sides are busy before 24. Slow there, and then 24 south, you're on the brakes in Randolph, leaving the lower end of 93. 3 south, you're on the brakes at Derby Street, and take a look at the lane drop. This report is sponsored by Indeed.com. Are you hitting speed bumps in your hiring process? Streamline your route to hired with Indeed. Their hiring platform makes it easy to attract.
Turn left at the traffic light.
It has found that the variant is about 4.2 times more transmissible than the Delta variant, at least in early stages. So that is unnerving markets a bit, although strategists at Deutsche Bank were saying more people could be hospitalized even if a lower proportion of them are severely affected. Again, going back to the issue of cost. And then we have news
arriving at 776 Boylston Street on the right.
COVID booster. It now includes 16 and 17-year-olds. Shares in Pfizer right now higher by more than 1.7%, and that's helping to lead healthcare stocks up. We also have strength among consumer staples. As a matter of fact, utilities also positive today. Those are the only 3 industry groups with